So beautiful to be together with you all. भैया सुनो, ये वाला पंखा बंद कर दीजिएगा, वो ज़्यादा शॉर्ट कर रहे हैं. We'll start as always with one of the questions that comes in from our तो बस कोई हवा आती नहीं उसे बस शॉर्ट करते. Thanks. Yes. We'll start with one of the questions that comes in advance from our beautiful family that joins us each evening online and sends in questions. And then we'll open it up to any questions that any of you have. And there's a microphone right here, so feel free to come up to the mic. Don't balanced. We want to be able to see the truth more. I mean, you may have some other objectives. Interact with consciousness. So it's not that consciousness itself expands, it's that our ability to interact with consciousness expands. Our awareness of consciousness, you could say, expands. And in order to do that, we have to follow some parameters. We've got to meditate. You've got to make time in your day to meditate. We're all busy. Things will get left undone. I know they will. Of human birth. Not meditating does not mean you're going to finish the items on your to-do list. But that's the game that the mind plays that says, oh my God, I don't have time to meditate because see, I've got these things to do. Doesn't happen. You've got to make time to meditate. And along with our practices, our meditation, our japa, the recitation of the eating bad food is going to mess up your physical health. And along with that comes the influence of other people. Where you go, who you talk to, what you talk about, the TV shows you watch, the movies you watch, the music you listen to, the people you hang around with, the people you follow on social media, all of that is food. It's food for the mind. Therefore, it's food for the thoughts. Therefore, when we go to become thoughtless, or when we are hoping that our thoughts will be purer and purer, clearer and clearer, stiller and stiller, truer and truer, this stuff is toxic to it. And so the advice to avoid toxic people is the advice around, in your human experience, on your karmic journey, doing your best to navigate your way through this human life. Yeah, as few toxic influences as you can have, the better you are. From your food to your friends. Everything that you take in is impacting you. As it is, the mind is a monkey, right? You sit down to meditate, the mind's going to think of so many things. It's going to go to the past, it's going to go to the future, it's going to dream about, the muffins that are being baked next door, or the coffee that's being brewed next door. Everything is going to distract it. We've got to do as much as we can to get yourself ahead. It's like in golf, they give you a handicap. My dad golfs, and he's always talking about his handicap. Like something, you get some kind of extra points if you're, 78, or, which he is, or, whatever it may be. For some reason, he gets a handicap. Or, if you're going to do a race, that for some reason, they'll put, certain people get to start a little bit ahead of where other people start on the starting blocks. And all of this is just a way of getting us ahead as we move on our spiritual path. It's just giving us a little bit of that extra few points of a handicap, of the extra head start. Eat a sattvic diet so that your food doesn't mess up with your digestion and also your neurology. And avoid toxins. What you listen to, what you watch, and the people you hang out with. So that's on that level. But then, of course, as I began, on the level in which we are all just supreme reality and there is nothing but God, on that level, just your aim is recognize there's nothing but God. And therefore, all of the people around you are just nothing but God. When you're avoiding things, it's important to realize that you're not doing them because those things are bad. And I think on the highest spiritual level, we would feel and generate as much compassion, as much loving kindness, as much understanding and oneness even with those people who are toxic. You can understand they are also soul. Like I am soul, they are soul. And yet, their personality in their particular individual karmic journey is a hindrance to my journey. Doesn't mean that they're not soul. It doesn't mean that they're not divine. It doesn't mean that their highest truth isn't God. It is. But it just means that their particular covering, that personality, that story, is one that keeps me stuck, keeps my brain full of junk. And so you avoid them. And then in your meditation, you go deeper and deeper and deeper, and you're able to recognize them as divine soul. And then as you stand up and you move through your world, you avoid them. And in your meditation, you recognize them and you see them. And on the street or in the office or in the community, wherever it is, you avoid them. Not meanly, not rudely, not like they walk this way and you just turn around and make a face and walk in the other direction. That just generates more negativity. But you get out of that energetic field as much as you can to give yourself the very best head start that you can on your spiritual path. Yeah, good question. Other questions that anyone here has? Yeah, Jimmy. And then we'll take yours in front.
Namaste, dearest Guru Sadhviji. I have a question I think you are also dealing with. My father's 91 years old, and he's been incredibly good to me my whole life. I want to know if there is a way to help them in this transition that they're coming to. How can I be helpful to him in the transition that is coming.
Wow, beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, and you come, as I do, from a Judeo-Christian Western background, which has its own ideas about death and what happens after we die. I think the very best thing you can do is, number one, don't do anything to hold him back unnecessarily. As long as he's strong and healthy, keep him engaged. Who knows, he could have another good 10, 15 years even. As long as he's strong and healthy, not in pain, enjoying life, keep him engaged. There's tons of evidence that a meaningful life not only is much more enjoyable and meaningful, but actually is very, very good for longevity, for health, that people who have meaningful things in their life tend to live longer than those who don't. Help him find meaning. Are there ways he can give back to the community? I don't know how much capacity he's got at this point, but are there ways that his life and his experience and his wisdom can benefit others? But when the time comes, as it inevitably will for everyone, where he's no longer vibrant and strong, where he's no longer enjoying life because there's now pain and suffering, that comes the time to not unnecessarily hold him back. Meaning, don't give him anything to be worried about. There's people who a lot of times really should let go, but there's something weighing on their mind. Oh my God, my daughter's not married yet. Oh my God, this. Oh my God, that. What about this? What about that? And so you really want to just help him understand everything's going to be okay. We got it all covered, Dad. Like, we're all good. We're all okay. Everybody's taken care of. You've done your job. Be at peace. And then, and I don't know how receptive he is to this, but to the extent that you can bring back to him some of that which you've absorbed from your study of and immersion in Eastern spiritual philosophies that speak about us being soul, not body, that speak about the soul being eternal, that speak about the idea that the only thing that's leaving is the body, but he's going to still be here. Share that with him. Again, to the extent that you feel comfortable and to the extent that he would permit it. But I'll tell you a personal story. When I first came to India in '96, and then had been here mostly for about a year and a half at that point. When I got back to America, I went back to visit in the end of '97. I had met my parents in London, and then we flew back together to Los Angeles. I was going to spend a couple weeks there, and I had put everything in storage. I had taken a year storage, and had stuck everything in storage, and finally I realized, all right, I'm living in India, no use paying for this stupid storage. So I had planned I would go and spend a couple of weeks and empty my storage and kind of really officially move myself to India. And when we land back in LA, my mom got a call that her mom, my grandma, was back in the hospital. She had been in and out. She had a whole bunch of health issues, but was back in the hospital and was in a coma, had had a heart attack, and if we wanted to see her alive, we should go straight there, like not even go home from the airport. So we did, and Grandma was in a coma, and they said, you know, maybe she has a few hours, maybe she has a couple days, nobody knows, but it's not going to be more than a couple of days. So we spent a few hours, and then I said, can I stay the night here with her? Like, you guys go home, but I'd like to stay with Grandma. So the hospital really sweetly made arrangements for me to stay the night. And I crawled into bed with her, and she was really in a coma. I mean, she had not moved or opened her eyes in, I forget how long it had been, but at least 24 hours at that point. And she was lying like this in her bed with her head flopped to that side. And I lay in bed next to her on this side. And didn't know very many mantras by that point, but I chanted the ones that I did know over and over and over and over again. And I just kept saying, Grandma, where you're going, it's beautiful. It's okay. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful where you're going. You can let go. It's not that scary nothingness that you think it is. It's really beautiful where you're going. It's okay, Grandma. And I just kept kissing her. And she had always been kind of touch averse. And I've always been a big hugger. And so I was always, throughout my childhood, hugging her. And she would always say, enough, enough, enough. And as I'm lying here chanting and kissing her, she finally at one point goes, she turns her head. She goes, and she sticks out her lips in this big pucker. And I gave her a kiss, and then she flopped her head back over and didn't move again until she died the next day. But I really think on a very deep level that she was waiting for me in a way, not because she loved me more than anybody else, not on a sentimental level, but because I was the only one in the family who could actually help her understand that it was okay to let go. Because I come from a family in which you don't let go. Like you have a death grip on life, and my grandmother certainly had one. And the idea of letting go on any level was terrifying to her. And I think she really needed someone to tell her it was okay. That she wasn't going to just dissolve into nothingness, that it wasn't going to be painful, that she wasn't going to burn in hell, that none of these things that we're kind of told were going to happen, but that actually where she was going was beautiful, and she'd be there, but just without the pain. And that it was okay. And yeah, I think it made a really big difference. So when he gets to that phase, you're going to, I think, have a really powerful role to play in, ministering that transition. And until then, keep him engaged, keep him happy, keep him living as meaningful of a life as he can. Make sure your kids visit him. Make sure, any other cousins or any grandkids, like one of the things that keeps them going is sort of the younger generation. And then really just help him understand this is the cycle of life. But you, the core of who you are, isn't going anywhere. There's nothing to be afraid of. One of my favorite teachings is by a beautiful, beautiful teacher named Ram Dass, who was a disciple of Neem Karoli Baba, who lived right here in Rishikesh. And Ram Dass had a friend who was spirit, who spoke to him and who gave him one of the teachings that was Ram Dass's favorite and one of my favorite of his teachings. Ram Dass had asked him, tell me something about death. Like, What do you have to say about death? And this spirit friend of his said, well, can tell you, it's perfectly safe. And it's such a simple but very sweet thing to realize. Of course it's safe. Of course it's safe. We're just going back into God's hands. Going back into God's arms. Yeah. I think the story, what we do, where we go, what we look like, all of that is what we identify as. And so death feels like literally the end of us. If before you die, you can get to know that of you which doesn't die, it's not going to be so scary. It's like if you had to go on a long trip and you were traveling with someone. You'd want to know that person before you went on the trip. And certainly if you did know that person, it would make the trip a lot less scary. You'd be a lot more excited, a lot more ready, a lot less nervous to go on that trip with someone you do know than with someone you don't know. I mean, imagine being sent off on a trip with a total stranger versus going off on a trip with a friend or a loved one. Right? It's like night and day difference. And so, to the extent that you can help him come to know that of him which is not dying, and introduce him to soul, spirit, divinity, as, hey, this is your travel companion. This is the one who will be there when nothing else is there. And to the extent that you can get to know and befriend this, before you find yourself making that transition, it'll be a lot less scary. Yeah. Yes.
Namaste.
Namaste.
You just mentioned the teachings behind Namaste. I would love to hear about the teachings behind Arty. At home, we work with water conservation, and it would be lovely to take some teachings to improve our way of.
Beautiful. Yeah, the Arti is a really powerful ceremony. Sanskrit words have many, many, many meanings. It's a very deep and complex language, powerful language. One of the meanings of the word Arti is the remover of pain. And the Arti is performed to the remover of pain in our life, to the divine. And it's a ceremony that's performed in temples. So if it's a Krishna temple, they will perform Arti to Krishna. If it's a Shiva temple, they will perform Arti to Shiva. People perform Arti to the Guru. Perform Arti to any divine embodiment, manifestation. And here we perform Arti to Mother Ganga, to the Mother Goddess. It's a time, as I always say, of gratitude, of love, The symbol of the light is really beautiful. You know, we say all day long, God bestows upon us the light of life and grace and blessings. And we offer this lamp as a light of our gratitude, of our love, of our devotion. So that's the meaning of the Aarti. And of course, we gather together in song and in prayer and in meditation. And there's absolutely no reason that you can't take this back, you know, to your spiritual community. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful ceremony. Yeah. Other questions? Ah, yes, of course, please come. Sorry, the pillar had blocked my view.
Hello, namaste.
Namaste.
My name's Sarah.
Can you just turn the mic a little? There you go.
I'm Sarah from Australia. Feeling a bit nervous to speak now, but I'll try and formulate my question. I think we both come from the same lineage, ancestral lineage anyway.
Just a second. Can you hear her? Yeah, you're not
Louder.
speaking. I think you have to just like.
Is that better?
Much better. Thank
Okay.
you.
We both come from the same ancestral
Oh, it went away. It went away. Maybe someone could help her with the mic. Yeah, thanks.
Closer. Is that better? I won't touch it. How about?
Perfect. I just want to make sure everyone can hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
Everyone hear me?
Perfect.
So I wanted to say that we're both from the same ancestral lineage. And I'm really struggling not to feel deep shame with what is going on at the moment in the name of the Jewish religion, in the name of, since October the 7th, and to find God in the leaders in Israel. I'm just wondering if you want to speak about that at all or offer any guidance.
Yeah. So, as you can imagine, I have a lot of thoughts on that which is happening in the Middle East, that which is happening in the name of God, in Israel, in surrounding countries. I'll share two of the main thoughts that I have on this. The first is, worships. But it's very easy to generate when you're talking about power, land, money, rights, rights to power, rights to land, rights to money. And what happens all too frequently is God essentially gets co-opted into being a tool of war. People who want people to go to war for them use God's name. Because see, if I said to a bunch of you, you know, I'd really like to be like queen of a bigger area. Like, I'd like to have more power. I'd like to have more subjects. I'd like to have more oil, water, other kinds of resources in my hand that were powerful. Do you think you could go out and like give up your life so I could have that? Now, you may like me, you may even love me, you may respect me, you're all here, but I would be shocked beyond belief if any of you would even consider the idea of going out to fight so I could be queen of a bigger piece of land. But if I say to you, those people are against God. Those people are the ones God has warned us about. If you remove these people, because these people are the ones preventing our people from living in peace. They are the reason that our women and children cannot live happily and safely. They are the reason you don't have jobs. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons that are given. There's a whole psychology around this. If you can convince people of that, then you get them to go out and fight. And then you get them even prepared to give up their lives. But it has actually nothing to do with God. What it has to do with is land and power and resources and money. And that's really important because we call these things religious wars. It's not about religion. It's about all the rest. It's about the idea that those people, and this goes on both sides, not just in the Middle East today, but any war you're going to pick, they're going to say that the other one is the reason that we live in terror. They are the reason that we do not have X, Y, and Z. They are the ones who are terrorists. They are the ones. And we use the name of God to get people ready to fight for us. But to me, it's always really clear that it's not about God. So that's the first piece. The second piece that I've spoken about before is that this is just the latest symptom in a global pandemic of separation and of us looking for more and more ways to separate, to see other, to be polarized, to get into smaller and smaller and smaller groups. And of course, when things like this happen, they give the rest of us then an excuse to polarize ourselves. Oh, which side do you support? Who do you think are the terrorists here? And then not only are they othering and polarized and separated and fighting, but it creates yet another excuse for the rest of us to jump into camps. And if you look at the last, if you just even take the last decade, or even not even, take the last 5-6 years, every month is yet another thing that we are using to create thicker and thicker walls around us. And whether it's around COVID, to vaccinate, not to vaccinate, who started it, how did it start, is it a conspiracy, is it this? Whether it's around political leaders, whether it's around the war, whether it's, there's so many things that keep arising in our world, giving us opportunities, and we are grabbing them voraciously to just pull ourselves away from the others and to create separation. And this brings me to what I think is the most important, which is our spiritual practice. Regardless of what any of us may think about currently what's happening in the Middle East, or in Ukraine and Russia, or in Sudan, or in Myanmar, or in so many other parts of the world, tragically, very few of us actually have the power to do something about it on the ground there. I mean, we can help those who have become refugees. We can help those who are now oppressed and homeless. But we have very little power to do anything about actual decisions that, whether it's governments or heads of organizations, are doing. They're not listening to us. But what we do have the power to do is to work very deeply in ourselves and make sure that we in our lives are agents and instruments of peace. And that we in our lives align ourselves with oneness and togetherness. It doesn't mean that I'm going to approve of everything everyone does. It doesn't mean I'm going to agree with everything everyone does. It doesn't mean I'm going to want to marry everyone I have a debate with. But it means that my highest goal and vision is, how can I find that which is one in this conversation, rather than the parts that separate us. Because we're never going to convince each other. And again, this is true not just about the current war. I never saw anybody change their opinion around vaccinations. I've never seen anybody change their opinion around a political party because someone else has tried to convince them. If someone changes their mind, it's something that comes from within them. Us debating, badgering, trying to convince, defriending, ghosting, this, that, none of it changes how anyone else thinks. All it does is make them hate us. And all it does is create more and more separation, less and less peace, so that whatever the next thing to arise is, we are ready. We are ready to get into our camps. We're ready to get into our circles. We're ready to go behind our dividing lines. And what I can tell you is, aside from the wars that we're facing, the greatest threat to humanity today is climate change. More people suffer and die every single year due to lack of clean water than all forms of violence combined. Take every war we've got going, take domestic violence, take drug-induced violence, take gang violence, take all forms of violence. Add all of those deaths together, and the number pales in comparison to those who are dying due to lack of clean water. And I mention this not to minimize those deaths, but the deaths in war are ones over which very few of us have any power to make a difference. By all means, use our voices absolutely for peace, but let's also use our brains and our voices and our resources and our arms and our legs and our time to save those who are dying from something we actually can do something about. Because that number is going to just increase. About 1 million people every year die simply due to lack of clean water. Every year. And it's just going to increase. So, as we pray for peace in the countries where there is not peace, let us also remember that there are ways in which we can work effectively, efficiently, impactfully against that type of violence. Because to die in one country or another from a bomb or a grenade or from dehydration and diarrhea. They're suffering. The mother of a child who dies of diarrhea is suffering no less than the mother of a child who died by a bomb. And so I think it's really important also, as we get really passionate about doing whatever we can to bring peace to the world, that we also look at the places where we can bring peace effectively, impactfully, and actually save lots and lots of lives. And of course, continue, as I said, continue to use our voices, continue to do whatever we can in all of those places, but not to get stuck in thinking that that is our only opportunity to help take care of the people and the children of this planet. And the dilemma that we face is, as we divide ourselves further and further and other each other more and more, we're not going to be able to come together and solve the climate crisis. If we keep getting ourselves into camps and we keep looking for things to fight about, when we need to come together and actually save the humanity of this planet, we're going to hate each other so much that we're not going to be able to come to a table together. And all we're going to do is bring more violence and more harm and more death to the planet. So let us stay as anchored in peace and oneness as we can, so that we are able to join hands, and we're able to join hearts, and we're able to join minds in working with all the other forms of violence, of pain, of suffering that we're just going to keep seeing now over and over and over again. And whether it's guns and bombs and grenades, whether it's rising sea levels, whether it's lack of water, whatever it is, we all need to be together in this. We can't fight it in camps. We can't fight it behind thick borders and boundaries. We have to remember our ultimate and inherent oneness. And again, doesn't mean that you appreciate, approve of, or even are prepared to tolerate what everyone is doing. But it means you remember that there is an inherent oneness. Because otherwise the human race doesn't stand a chance. And that's the spiritual calling, so that we can actually come together. Yeah. So a bit of a heavy place to end, but I think it's an important call to action. Inner action and outer action. And it's important also, just lastly, to reclaim truth, because a lot of the anger that a lot of us feel about what's going on in wars all over the world is because that's what we keep seeing on social media. What we're not seeing are women dying in childbirth. What we're not seeing is children dying of hunger. Tens of thousands of them every day. And we actually produce enough food to feed 10 billion people. I mean, talk about preventable deaths. The food that we produce is cycled through animal agriculture. It's cycled through the meat industry, being fed to the cows and the pigs and the chickens who become hamburgers and hot dogs and chicken McNuggets. And I share all of this with you because these are not things that we see when we open our WhatsApp or open our Instagram. And yet, the child dying of starvation is violence, and it's harm, and it's injustice. And I just want to make sure as we grow spiritually that we reclaim really our and we're losing also so many unspeakably, the children themselves are not unspeakably awful, so many beautiful children in unspeakably awful ways. And just as we open our hearts and our minds and our lives to those suffering in war, we also need to open our hearts and our minds and our lives to those suffering in ways that our lives and our choices and our decisions are actually propagating. None of us here is responsible in any way for what's going on in the Middle East. But we are responsible for a lot of the hunger deaths, for a lot of the lack of water deaths. And not to make anyone feel guilty, but just to make everyone feel really empowered. Because we can make a lot of different decisions and save a lot of lives. So, a lot to think about. And I hope that you have a very beautiful, very deep, very anchored, very grounded, very clear rest of your evening. I look so forward to seeing you all again in Satsang tomorrow. And so